Thank you, and thanks to In Defense of Christians for organizing this conference today. Yesterday, there was a new poll out, a Marist poll, that showed that most Americans understand that there is atrocities amounting to genocide going on in Iraq and Syria, and that they acknowledge this as genocide by a very wide margin. This is a poll that was sponsored by the Knights of Columbus. The Pope Francis, the Independent U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and many other prominent and expert voices have spoken out and said this is genocide. So why hasn't the administration? On December 4th, a letter went to Secretary Kerry that I helped organize. It was signed by 30 prominent religious freedom experts and religious heads, asking for an opportunity to brief the Secretary of State on the genocide of Christians in the Middle East. It was asking for a meeting. To date, there has been no response. That was over 10 days ago. This was a letter that was signed by Cardinal Wuerl, by the head of the Assembly of God, by the spokesman for the Southern Baptist Convention, by the head of the Knights of Columbus, the dean of the Episcopal Cathedral at St. John the Divine in New York, by Anglican bishops, by scholars such as Princeton and USERF's Robert George, Harvard Law School's Marianne Glendon, Katrina Lantis Sweat, and so forth. No response. So what is the evidence? The other speakers have already given many other examples. I will just give a few. And it's important to note that the genocide occurred or started against Christians long before ISIS appeared. It was started by, in fact, ISIS's predecessor organization, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And we saw the churches being destroyed and blown up then, including in 2010, Our Lady of Salvation Church in Baghdad, filled with worshipers, blown up. About 50 were killed and the rest were wounded among the worshipers. A convoy of students, of Christian students in the Nineveh Plain traveling by a school bus to attend the University of Mosul. They were blown up as well in 2010. More recently, many of the deaths of Christians over time in both countries resulted from or preceded by kidnappings and then their murders. Women are not excluded from slavery, sexual enslavement. We know of 3 Christian women and girls who were sold on Mosul slave markets. ISIS, in its magazine Dabiq, celebrates this ability to enslave Christian women in Nigeria. It points to Nigeria and the Philippines as examples. The Melkite Catholic Bishop of Aleppo, Archbishop Jumbar, said that just this fall that over 1,000 Christians have been kidnapped and murdered in his city of Aleppo alone. Most recently, we saw the executions of 3 Assyrian Christian men dressed in orange jumpsuits with a gun to their head, executed. They identified themselves as, I am an Assyrian Christian. ISIS then, that was broadcast on publicized on a ISIS video. And they promised to execute 200 others unless $10 million was paid. That they have, the 200 that they already have captive. On August 28th, the Christian Aid Mission in Charlottesville, Virginia, just a few miles down the road from here, said that some of the indigenous pastors and preachers they work with in Syria were murdered. They were beheaded and crucified on August 28th outside of Aleppo. These were Protestant or evangelical preachers who refused to renounce their faith. They were converts from Islam, and they first took the preacher's 12-year-old boy and sliced off his fingertips. When the father refused to renounce his own faith, they beat the son. And then, when he still refused, they crucified the son in front of the father, and then they went on to crucify the father. Several women in the next town over were also taken, and they were raped in the public square, and then they were beheaded. So that was on August 28th. Some say that, as Dr. Stanton pointed out, that the Jizya Tax is an option for the Christians. That is a tax that's meant to humiliate Christians, to make them know their place as subservient people, and to, over time, convert them to Islam through the pressure of it. And we know that, and the contract, this tax contract, the dhimmi contract, is to provide protection and the right to worship in exchange. In fact, ISIS provides neither. And we know this because the tax has been applied, the jizya has been applied both in Raqqa and in Mosul. There is no evidence of any open Christian activity in either of those cities today. All the churches are closed or destroyed or been converted to mosques in those two cities. Raqqa is being slaughtered silently website talks about this just in the past week, about how there's no evidence of priests or masses or liturgies or any kind of religious service. There was a public Bible burning in Raqqa when ISIS took over. In fact, the administration's, just until a few months ago, the administration's, State Department's counterterrorism expert, Ambassador Alberto Fernandez, calls the jizya under ISIS, quote, a Wahhabi Salafi publicity stunt. And again, in most cases, there is no even jizya option offered, so-called option offered. As Dr. Stanton said, when the money runs out, then the children, the lives are taken in, and property are taken anyhow. And we have examples of that from Syria. Certainly, the Jesuits, Father Franz van der Loot, Father Paolo Adolio, the two Orthodox bishops, Armenian and Orthodox priests, et cetera, Father Ghana in Mosul, who was shot for not closing his church. None of these people had a jizya option at all. So, let me just conclude by saying that, yes, genocide, calling it genocide does matter. It matters for resettlement purposes. It matters for restitution of property and losses at land, for land and territory, for reparations for property and losses. And also, as a lawyer, I consider it not insignificant that this solemn vow after the Holocaust of never again would we allow, the civilized world allow a genocide to continue unacknowledged and unabated, be allowed. I think that is extremely important to uphold this justice, this principle of justice. And if we don't in this case, it will be hollowed out and drained of all meaning. It will be dead letter. Thank you very much. Let me just end one more thing to say. President Obama, Secretary Kerry, Samantha Power, Ambassador Power, Susan Rice, where are you? Where are your voices? And Speaker Paul Ryan, please bring Resolution 75 to a vote right away. Thank you.